the sons of Karthos IV beat down mercilessly on the ancient sandstone arena, its weathered walls telling stories of bloodshed and spectacle from centuries past. Orion Vale adjusted the plasma rifle, strapped to his back, as he surveyed the dilapidated city, sprawling around the massive Colosseum-like structure. Dust devils swirled through abandoned streets, while the distant sound of chanting echoed from within the arena's walls. He touched the mysterious crystal pendant hanging around his neck, a habit developed over years of dangerous missions. The smooth, iridescent gem pulsed with a faint blue light against his scarred, muscular chest. It was his only companion through countless jobs across the lawless expanse of the outer systems. "Another dump of a planet," Orion muttered, pulling his tactical scarf over his nose as a gust of sand-laden wind swept through the alley. "Should have charged double for this delivery." The pendant warmed slightly against his skin, almost as if responding to his complaint. "Oh, shut up," he growled at the gem. "Not everyone gets to just hang around a neck all day." The chanting grew louder as he approached the arena's service entrance, a small, nondescript door carved into the base of the massive structure. According to his intel, the local religious authorities would be gathering for some kind of ceremonial ritual. His job was simple: deliver the sealed container in his pack to High Priest Cain, collect his payment, and get off this backwater rock before nightfall. Easy credits, or so he thought. The service tunnel opened into a dimly lit corridor, lined with flickering torch-like devices that cast eerie, dancing shadows on the ancient stone walls. Orion moved silently, years of hunting bounties having taught him the value of stealth, even during supposedly routine deliveries. The corridor gradually widened, and the chanting grew to a fevered pitch. He emerged onto a covered observation platform overlooking the arena's main floor. Below, at least 100 figures in crimson robes circled around a central platform where a massive metal cauldron sat atop a bed of glowing embers. Steam rose from the water within, which was already beginning to bubble. But it wasn't the cauldron that made Orion pause. It was what stood beside it. A slender, humanoid figure, with skin the color of sea foam, stood bound to a stone pillar. Her wrists and ankles were secured with energy restraints that glowed an angry red against her delicate green skin. Long, iridescent hair that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light cascaded down her back. Even from this distance, Orion could see the fear in her large, almond-shaped eyes. She was clearly not human, nor was she of any species common to this sector. She appeared to be a Milleran, a race thought to be nearly extinct after the galactic purges a century ago. Millerans were known for their bioluminescent abilities, and were said to possess remarkable healing powers. The pendant at Orion's chest grew uncomfortably hot. "I see it," he whispered. "Not my problem. I'm just here for the delivery." But even as he said it, something about the scene below disturbed him. The young Milleran woman's eyes darted frantically around the arena, searching for any possibility of escape or mercy. Then, as if sensing his presence, her gaze locked with his across the distance. There was something in those eyes, intelligence, desperation, and a silent plea that made Orion's hand instinctively move toward his weapon. A robed figure separated from the circle and approached the platform. Even before the man pushed back his hood, Orion recognized him as High Priest Cain, the recipient of his delivery. The religious leader was tall and gaunt, with pale skin stretched tight over sharp features and eyes that burned with fanatical intensity. "The time has come, my faithful," Cain's voice boomed across the arena. "Tonight, we shall absorb the cosmic energy of this celestial wanderer. Her essence will fuel our ascension to the stars." The crowd's chanting intensified as Cain approached the bound alien girl, producing a ceremonial knife that gleamed in the dying sunlight. "First, we mark her with the sacred symbols," Cain declared. "Then, when the third moon rises, we shall immerse her in the cauldron of transcendence and consume the broth of her power." The pendant burned against Orion's chest like a coal. The Milleran girl's eyes remained fixed on him, somehow seeing him in his shadowed observation point. "Stop looking at me," Orion muttered. "I'm not your savior." But even as he said it, he felt something stir within him, a feeling he'd long suppressed in his years as a bounty hunter. Conscience, perhaps. Or maybe just the annoying tendency to get involved in things that didn't concern him, and certainly didn't pay well. With a resigned sigh, Orion pulled back into the shadows. He had a delivery to make, and now, potentially, a complication to address. The pendant cooled slightly, as if satisfied. "This doesn't mean anything," Orion told it. "I'm just gathering information. The job comes first." The gem pulsed once, almost mockingly. Infiltrating the Starflame cult proved easier than expected. After observing the initial ceremony from his hidden vantage point, Orion had retreated to the outskirts of the arena to formulate a plan. The sealed package he was meant to deliver provided the perfect cover, a rare artifact supposedly recovered from an ancient stellar temple. Now, wrapped in a borrowed crimson robe, with his face partially concealed, Orion moved among the cultists with practiced ease. The package secured to his back beneath the robes gave him the appearance of a slightly hunched devotee, just another faceless believer in the crowd. The main ceremony had paused as the cultists prepared for the night's ritual. The Milleran girl had been removed from the central platform, presumably taken to holding cells beneath the arena. This gave Orion the opportunity he needed to gather intelligence and, perhaps more importantly, to make his scheduled delivery without drawing unwanted attention. He approached a group of acolytes who were arranging ceremonial bowls around the perimeter of the cauldron. "Brothers," Orion greeted them, pitching his voice toward reverence. "I've only recently joined our sacred cause. The High Priest's words moved me deeply, but I admit I don't fully understand the ritual we're preparing for. Could you enlighten me?" One of the acolytes looked up, eyes gleaming with zealous pride. "You're fortunate to join us on such a momentous occasion, brother. Tonight, we will absorb the cosmic energy of a Milleran, one of the last of her kind." "The process seems complex," Orion prompted. "It is the way of the ancients," another acolyte explained eagerly. "The cauldron of transcendence will extract her bioluminescent essence. When we consume the energy soup, her power becomes our power." "Has this been done before?" Orion asked, careful to keep his tone merely curious rather than skeptical. The first acolyte nodded. "Twice in our generation, though with lesser celestial beings. Never with a Milleran. Their healing light is said to be the purest energy in the galaxy." "And the girl survives this process?" Orion kept his voice neutral, despite the disgust rising within him. The acolytes exchanged glances. "The vessel's survival is irrelevant," the second one said dismissively. "Only the energy matters." "Of course," Orion nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "And where is High Priest Kane now? I have questions only he can answer." "The High Priest prepares in the sanctum below. None may disturb him until the third moon rises." Orion thanked them and moved on, processing this information. The pendant at his chest had maintained a steady warmth since he'd entered the arena, like a silent alarm. I know," he muttered under his breath. "They're planning to boil her alive. Not exactly the enlightened spiritual awakening they're advertising." He needed to find the holding cells. But first, he had a delivery to complete. If Kane was in the sanctum below, that's where Orion needed to go. The delivery would provide legitimate access, and perhaps an opportunity to locate the Milleran girl as well. Finding the entrance to the lower levels proved challenging in the labyrinthine structure of the ancient arena. Orion carefully observed the movements of higher-ranking cultists, noting which corridors they used and which doors required access codes. Eventually, he identified a guarded stairwell that appeared to lead downward. The two robed guards stood at rigid attention, their ceremonial staffs crackling with energy that suggested they were more than mere symbols of office. Orion approached directly, projecting confidence. "I bring a delivery for High Priest Cain," he announced, partially revealing the sealed container beneath his robes. "From the Cygnus Collective. He expects it before the ceremony." The guards exchanged glances. "We received no word of a delivery," one said suspiciously. "The High Priest arranged it personally," Orion countered smoothly. "The artifact within is crucial for tonight's ritual. Would you prefer I return with it and explain to him why his ceremony had to be postponed?" It was a calculated risk, but Orion had long experience with hierarchical organizations, religious or otherwise. No one wanted to be the one who disrupted the plans of a superior, especially one as apparently fanatical as Cain. After a moment's hesitation, one guard stepped aside while the other activated a communicator on his wrist. "A messenger brings a package for the High Priest, from the Cygnus Collective." There was a pause, then a crackling response that Orion couldn't quite make out. "You may proceed," the guard said finally, gesturing toward the stairwell. "Third level down, central chamber. Do not deviate from the path." "May the stars burn eternal," Orion replied, having heard the phrase repeatedly among the cultists. The stairwell spiraled downward, carved from the same red stone as the arena above, but much older, with glyphs and symbols etched into the walls that predated the current structure by centuries. The air grew cooler and damper with each step, carrying strange odors, incense, ozone, and something more troubling that Orion recognized as the metallic scent of blood. The pendant pulsed more urgently now, its warmth becoming almost uncomfortable against his skin. "I'm working on it," he whispered. "But the delivery comes first. It's our ticket down here." The third level opened into a wider corridor, lit by the same flickering torch devices as above. Orion counted doors as he passed, holding cells, storage rooms, and what appeared to be small, private meditation chambers. Voices echoed from the central chamber ahead, where Orion could see more elaborate decorations adorning the entryway. As he approached, the voices became clearer. One he recognized as Cain's, the other unfamiliar but with the clipped precision of a technician or scientist. "The calibrations are complete, High Priest," the second voice was saying. "The extraction apparatus will operate at maximum efficiency." "Excellent, Dr. Varick," Cain replied. "The Milaran's energy output exceeded our initial readings. With the amplification circuit installed, this harvest will fuel our ascension beyond anything we've achieved before." Orion paused just outside the entrance, listening. "There is one concern." The one called Dr. Varick continued. "The subject's bioluminescence appears to intensify under stress. If pushed beyond certain thresholds, there's a possibility of an energy surge that could damage the equipment. Then we will proceed carefully," Cain said dismissively. "Prepare a sedative that won't compromise the purity of the essence. We cannot risk damaging such a rare specimen before extraction." Specimen, extraction, harvest. The clinical detachment in their voices made Orion's jaw tighten. This wasn't religious fervor, at least not entirely. There was something more calculated happening beneath the veneer of spiritual ritual. Taking a deep breath, Orion adjusted his robes and stepped into the chamber's entrance. The room before him was a strange blend of ancient temple and modern laboratory. Stone walls carved with celestial symbols surrounded equipment that would not have looked out of place on a core world research station. In the center stood High Priest Cain, his crimson robes more elaborate than those of his followers, embroidered with golden thread that formed complex astronomical patterns. Beside him stood a shorter, stouter man in simple gray clothing, presumably Dr. Varick, who was adjusting controls on what appeared to be a portable analysis station. Both men looked up as Orion entered. "High Priest Cain," Orion said, bowing his head in deference. "I bring the artifact you requested from the Cygnus Collective." Cain's eyes narrowed slightly. "Ah, Yes, the containment unit. You're earlier than expected. The transit lanes were clear, Orion replied smoothly. The collective emphasized the importance of timely delivery. Kane gestured impatiently. Let me see it. Orion removed the sealed container from beneath his robes and presented it. It was roughly the size of a small shield, constructed of dark alloy with security locks along one side. Whatever was inside, the Cygnus Collective had ensured it wouldn't be accessed by unauthorized persons. Kane took the container, examining the security seals with obvious satisfaction. Perfect. Dr. Varick, integrate this with the primary circuit. The doctor stepped forward, taking the container with reverent care. At once, High Priest Orion remained standing before them, hands folded within his sleeves, observing. The chamber contained multiple monitoring stations, all seemingly focused on data collection. On one screen, he could see what appeared to be a holding cell, and within it, the Malaran girl, now seated on a simple bench with her head bowed. Your payment, Kane said, withdrawing a credit chip from within his robes. As agreed, the collective's discretion is appreciated, as always. Orion accepted the chip with a slight bow. The collective values your continued patronage. He paused, then added, If I may ask, High Priest, the ceremony tonight, it's said to be unlike any before it. Kane's eyes gleamed with fanatical intensity. Indeed, the Malaran's energy will elevate us beyond mere flesh. Her essence will fuel our transcendence. I've heard legends of the Malaran healing abilities, Orion ventured. Are they true? More than legend, Kane replied, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Their bioluminescence can restructure damaged tissue, regenerate organs, even extend life itself. Imagine such power, not wasted on individual healing, but harnessed, concentrated, and distributed to the worthy. Remarkable, Orion said, genuinely surprised by Kane's candor. And the extraction process? Kane's expression darkened slightly. Requires complete dissolution of the physical form. The energy soup, as the acolytes call it, contains the purest distillation of the Malaran's power. When consumed, it will transform us. Dr. Varick cleared his throat. High Priest, I've begun integrating the containment unit with our systems. Initial diagnostics are promising. Kane nodded, then turned back to Orion. Your curiosity suggests genuine interest in our work. Perhaps you would serve the flame beyond mere delivery. It was an opening, one Orion hadn't expected, but could use. I admit, I find your mission compelling. The collective sends me to many worlds, but few with visions such as yours. Then stay for the ceremony, Kane offered. Witness the beginning of our ascension. Orion bowed again. I would be honored, High Priest. Return to the surface, Kane instructed. Join the devotees in preparation. When the third moon rises, our great work begins. Orion backed away respectfully, his mind racing. He now had confirmation of their plans for the Malaran girl, a better understanding of the facility's layout, and most importantly, an invitation to remain for the ceremony. It was more than he'd hoped for from the delivery alone. As he turned to leave, the pendant beneath his robes pulsed with unmistakable urgency. The Malaran girl on the monitor had raised her head, as if sensing something. For a brief moment, her eyes seemed to look directly at the camera, directly at him. Tell the guards to admit you to observation level 2 after the first bell. Kane called after him. You'll have a privileged view of the transformation. Thank you, High Priest, Orion replied, not breaking stride. May the stars burn eternal. As he ascended the spiral staircase, Orion's mind worked through possibilities and probabilities. His official job was complete. Delivery made. Payment received. By any professional standard, he should now return to his ship and leave this forsaken rock. But the pendant burned against his chest. and the image of those pleading eyes remained fixed in his mind. "Fine," he muttered to the gem as he emerged into the upper levels. "But we do this my way." The holding cells were located on the second level below ground. Orion had noted their location during his descent to meet Kane. Now, with the delivery complete and his presence established as a welcomed observer, he had the perfect cover to move throughout the facility. The difficulty would be accessing the restricted areas without raising alarm. He needed to speak with the Malaran girl directly. If he was going to risk his neck, and potentially a substantial future income from the Cygnus Collective, he wanted to know exactly what he was getting involved with. The first warning bell rang throughout the arena, signaling 2 hours until the ceremony would begin. Cultists moved with increased purpose, preparing offerings and purification rituals. Orion used the resulting activity as cover, slipping away from the main concourse toward a service corridor he'd identified earlier. The corridor led to a maintenance shaft that, according to the ancient arena's layout, should connect to all levels. These old structures often followed similar designs: public areas above, functional spaces below, all connected by service passages for the workers who kept the spectacles running smoothly. The shaft was narrow and dusty, clearly unused by the current occupants of the arena. Orion descended carefully, counting levels, until he reached what should be the second sublevel. A narrow grate provided visual confirmation. Robed guards patrolled a corridor lined with cell doors. Orion waited, observing the patrol pattern. 2 guards, moving in opposite directions, passing each other approximately every 5 minutes. Standard procedure would put the high-value prisoner, the Malaran girl, in the most secure cell, likely in the center of the block. When both guards had passed, and the corridor momentarily emptied, Orion carefully removed the grate and slipped through, replacing it behind him. He moved silently to the central cell door, which featured more elaborate security measures than the others, electronic locks supplementing the physical barriers. The pendant at his chest grew warmer as he approached, pulsing with a rhythm that almost matched his heartbeat. "I know she's in there," he whispered. "Keep it down before you set off alarms." The lock required an access code or authorization key. Orion had neither, but he did have tools of his trade. From a concealed pocket in his boot, he extracted a small device, a universal bypass module, illegal in most systems, but essential for a bounty hunter who occasionally needed to extract targets from secure locations. He attached the module to the electronic lockpad and activated it. The device cycled through potential combinations at high speed, analyzing the lock's response patterns to narrow down possibilities. Footsteps approached from the left corridor, a guard returning on patrol. Orion flattened himself against the wall beside the door, preparing to subdue the guard if necessary. The pendant's warmth intensified, almost warning. The footsteps paused. Orion held his breath. "Observation Level 2, report status," came a voice over the guard's communicator. "All secure," the guard replied. "No unusual activity. Remain vigilant. The High Priest has authorized a visitor after the first bell. Delivery agent from the Collective." "Understood. I'll escort him when he arrives." The guard continued his patrol, passing the central cell without noticing the bypass module, or Orion concealed in the shadows. As soon as the footsteps faded, Orion returned to the device, which had completed its work. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Orion eased the door open just enough to slip inside, then closed it behind him. The cell was surprisingly large but sparsely furnished. A single bench, a basic sanitation unit, and lighting panels embedded in the ceiling that cast everything in a sterile white glow. In the center stood the Malaran girl, her seafoam skin almost luminescent in the harsh light. She turned as he entered, eyes widening with a mixture of fear and surprise. Up close, her alien features were even more striking: high cheekbones, slightly elongated eyes with irises that shifted color like opals, and delicate gill-like structures along the sides of her neck that fluttered with each breath. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice melodic despite the tension. "Another priest come to prepare me?" "No," Orion replied quietly, keeping his distance to avoid alarming her further. "My name is Orion Vale. I'm not exactly sure why I'm here." The pendant chose that moment to pulse visibly through his robes, its blue light briefly illuminating the fabric. The Milleran girl's eyes fixed on the location of the gem. "You have a lodestone," she whispered, taking a step forward. "A Milleran heartstone." Orion's hand went to the pendant. "This? It's just a trinket I've had for years. Brings me luck sometimes." "It's not a trinket," she said, her voice gaining strength. "It's a piece of my homeworld. They were given only to those who shared blood oath with the Milleran people." Her eyes studied him with new intensity. "How did you come by it?" "It was a payment. For a job long ago." Orion shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny. "Look, I don't have much time. Those cultists up there are planning to boil you alive to make some kind of energy soup. I thought you should know." "I know what they intend," she replied, a shudder passing through her slender frame. "It is not the first time my kind has been hunted for our light." She hesitated, then added, "You were watching earlier, from the observation platform. I sensed the Heartstone's presence." Orion frowned. "You could sense this thing from that distance?" "The stones are connected to our life force. They resonate with our presence." She took another step toward him. "I am Lyria, and you, Orion Vale, have been drawn here by forces beyond mere coincidence." "I was drawn here by a delivery contract," Orion corrected her. "The fact that you were here is just bad timing." "Is it?" Lyria challenged softly. "The Heartstone warmed when I was near, did it not? Perhaps even spoke to you in some way." Orion's silence was answer enough. "Help me escape," Lyria said, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "I can heal with my light. Any injury, any illness, I can mend it. That power should be used to help, not consumed for someone else's ascension." "These cultists seem pretty serious about their ceremony," Orion said, glancing toward the door. "Getting you out won't be easy." "I have allies searching for me," Lyria pressed. "If we can reach a communication array, I can signal them." Orion ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "And what do I get out of this? I've already completed my delivery. Getting involved further means burning bridges with a valuable client." The pendant pulsed against his chest, almost reproachfully. "Oh, shut up," he muttered to it. "The Heartstone has chosen you as its bearer," Lyria said, a hint of amusement in her voice despite their situation. "It would not have bound itself to someone unworthy." "Great. A judgmental rock." Orion sighed heavily. "Look, I can help you get out of this cell. After that, we'll figure out next steps." "Thank you," Lyria said, relief evident in her voice. A sudden commotion in the corridor outside silenced them both. Voices approached, multiple sets of footsteps moving with purpose. "Hide!" Lyria hissed. Orion glanced around the barren cell. There was nowhere to conceal himself. "Too late for that. Follow my lead." He quickly moved toward Lyria, grabbing her arm roughly, just as the cell door slid open. 2 guards entered, followed by Dr. Varric. "What is the meaning of this?" Varric demanded, eyes narrowing at the sight of Orion. "This area is restricted. High Priest Kane sent me to assess the specimen's condition before the ceremony." Orion replied without hesitation, his grip on Lyria's arm, making it appear he was restraining her. "He's concerned about energy fluctuations affecting the extraction process." Varric's suspicion didn't waver. "I received no such instruction." "Perhaps you should consult with the High Priest," Orion suggested. "I'm sure he'll be pleased to explain why he felt your preparations were insufficient." It was a gamble, playing on the apparent tension between the scientific and religious aspects of their operation. Varick's expression tightened at the implied criticism. "The specimen is perfectly calibrated for the ceremony," he said stiffly. "Any further assessment risks disrupting the energy balance we've established." "I'm simply following orders," Orion replied with a shrug. "But I'll be sure to inform the High Priest that you countermanded his directive." The doctor hesitated, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he gestured to the guards. "Escort this devotee back to the upper levels. His assessment is unnecessary." Orion released Lyria's arm, his expression carefully neutral. "As you wish, Doctor. The High Priest will be interested to hear of your dedication to the process." As the guards moved to flank him, Orion caught Lyria's eye briefly. The message was clear. Be ready. They led him from the cell, the door sliding shut behind them with a definitive thud. The corridor stretched before them, leading back toward the central stairwell. Orion walked between the guards, apparently compliant, but mentally mapping their route and noting security positions. "You're new to the flame," one guard commented as they walked. "I haven't seen you at previous ceremonies." "The High Priest invited me personally after my delivery," Orion replied, maintaining his cover. "The Cygnus Collective has supported your work for some time." "The Collective," the guard nodded respectfully. "Their contributions have been valuable." They reached the stairwell and began to ascend. Orion's mind raced, calculating timing and probabilities. The ceremony would begin when the third moon rose, approximately 2 hours from now, according to the first bell. He needed to retrieve his weapons, disable the arena's security systems, and return for Lyria before then. As they emerged onto the main level, the guards relaxed slightly. Their job was simply to remove him from the restricted area, not to detain him. "You're free to rejoin the preparation rituals," the lead guard informed him. "Observation Level 2 will be opened to selected witnesses after the second bell." "Thank you, brothers," Orion replied with appropriate deference. "May the stars burn eternal." The guards left him at the main concourse, returning to their posts below. Orion moved purposefully through the growing crowd of devotees, his crimson robes allowing him to blend seamlessly. The second bell would ring in approximately 1 hour, signaling the final preparations before the ceremony. He needed to act quickly. His first priority was to recover his weapons from the cache he'd established outside the arena: the plasma rifle, sidearm, and tactical gear he couldn't bring inside during his initial infiltration. The delivery might be complete, but Orion Vale never left a job half-finished. And somehow, against all professional judgment, rescuing Lyria had become part of the job. The pendant at his chest hummed, with what felt remarkably like approval. "This doesn't make us friends," he told it quietly. "And I'm definitely charging extra for this complication." The 3 moons of Carthos IV hung like pale ghosts in the darkening sky, the smallest of them just beginning its ascent. Time was running short. Orion moved through the shadows of the ruined city, having slipped away from the arena through a maintenance exit while the cultists were distracted with their preparations. His gear cache was exactly where he'd left it, concealed beneath debris in the collapsed remains of what had once been a merchant's shop. The familiar weight of his plasma rifle across his back and the sidearm at his hip restored some of his confidence. The tactical belt with its various tools and devices completed his arsenal. Orion checked his ship's remote status through his wrist communicator. The Neo-Valkyrie was secure at the landing port on the city's outskirts, primed for a quick departure. If everything went according to plan, he and Lyria would be breaking atmosphere before the cultists realized their sacred vessel was gone. Of course, things rarely went according to plan. The pendant pulsed urgently as he approached the arena once more, its warmth increasing with each step. Orion had abandoned the crimson robes, opting instead for the shadowed anonymity of his usual dark tactical gear. Infiltrating the arena again would be more challenging without the disguise, but the additional mobility and protection were worth the trade-off. He scanned the structure, identifying potential entry points. The main entrances would be heavily guarded now, with the ceremony approaching. Service entrances would likely have increased security as well. That left the less conventional options: maintenance shafts, ventilation systems, or the partially collapsed sections of the ancient structure that the cultists had deemed unimportant. Orion selected a crumbling section of the exterior wall, where centuries of erosion had created a narrow fissure. It would be a tight squeeze, but manageable for someone with his experience. As he approached, the pendant's pulsing increased in frequency, becoming almost frantic. "What is it now?" he muttered, touching the gem through his tactical shirt. The moment his fingers made contact, a flash of images invaded his mind. Lyria, surrounded by robed figures, being led from her cell toward the arena floor. The ceremony was beginning early. Orion cursed and abandoned stealth, sprinting toward the fissure. He wedged himself into the narrow opening, ignoring the scrape of stone against his shoulders and back as he forced his way through. The passage opened into a dark, debris-filled corridor that appeared to have been part of the original structure, now abandoned and forgotten by the current occupants. Distant chanting echoed through the ancient stones, confirming what the pendant had somehow communicated. The ritual was already underway. The second bell must have rung while he was retrieving his gear, and the ceremonial procession had begun. Orion oriented himself based on the sounds, moving through the abandoned section toward the arena's center. The corridor eventually joined with a more maintained passage, forcing him to slow his pace and proceed with greater caution. The chanting grew louder, accompanied now by the rhythmic beating of drums. He encountered the first guards at a junction leading toward the arena floor, two robed figures with ceremonial staffs that, as he'd noted earlier, contained very real energy weapons. Orion withdrew a small device from his tactical belt and activated it, sending it skittering across the floor toward the guards. Before they could react, it released a concentrated pulse that temporarily disrupted their nervous systems, dropping them unconscious without a sound. Orion moved past them, retrieving his device as he went. The passage opened onto a viewing platform, similar to the one he'd first observed from, but lower and closer to the arena floor. From this vantage point, he could see the full ceremonial arrangement. The massive cauldron now boiled furiously, steam rising in clouds that were captured and channeled by some kind of collection apparatus suspended above it. High Priest Cain stood on an elevated platform, arms raised as he led the gathered cultists in their chanting. The crowd had grown considerably since Orion's earlier observations. At least 300 devotees now filled the tiered seating of the arena. And there, being led in procession toward the central platform, was Lyria. Her restraints had been replaced with ceremonial bonds of twisted metal that glowed with the same angry red energy. Her seafoam skin seemed to shimmer with an internal light that pulsed in waves, fear or resistance. Orion couldn't tell which. Dr. Varric accompanied the procession, monitoring some kind of handheld device that presumably measured Lyria's energy output. 4 guards flanked them, their staffs held at ready positions. Orion assessed the situation rapidly. A direct assault would be suicide. Too many cultists, too much open ground to cover. He needed a distraction, something to scatter the crowd and create enough chaos to reach Lyria. The pendant burned against his chest, almost painfully hot now. Orion looked down to see the gem glowing visibly through his tactical shirt, its blue light intensifying with each pulse. "What are you trying to tell me?" he whispered. Another flash of images filled his mind, but not of the present scene. Instead, he saw glimpses of the ancient arena as it had once been, when the current structure was new. Beneath it lay something older, something the arena had been built upon, a network of chambers and machinery that predated human settlement on Carthos IV. And at the center, directly beneath the arena floor, a power source still hummed with dormant energy. Orion blinked as the vision faded, understanding dawning. The arena wasn't just built on the ruins of an ancient structure. It was built to harness whatever power lay beneath. The cultists had repurposed it for their ceremony, perhaps without fully understanding what they were tapping into. His gaze shifted to the collection apparatus above the cauldron. It wasn't just designed to capture steam. It was connected to conduits that ran beneath the arena floor, integrating with the ancient systems below. The pendant had shown him a potential solution: overload the ancient power source, disrupt the ceremony, and use the resulting chaos to reach Lyria. But first, he needed to access the sublevel where that power source was located. And according to the vision, there was an access point near his current position, a maintenance shaft used by the original builders to service the underground systems. Orion scanned the walls of the passage behind him, looking for any indication of the access point. The pendant pulsed directionally, guiding him toward a section of wall that appeared solid but, upon closer inspection, showed faint seams that had been plastered over. Using a small cutting tool from his belt, Orion quickly carved through the plaster, revealing an ancient control panel beneath. The technology was unfamiliar, neither modern nor matching any historical human design he recognized. This was truly alien architecture. The pendant pulsed again, and instinctively, Orion pressed it against the panel. The gem's light synchronized with patterns on the panel's surface, and a section of the wall silently receded, revealing a narrow shaft with ladder-like protrusions leading downward. Without hesitation, Orion entered the shaft, the wall sliding closed behind him. The pendant's light provided sufficient illumination as he descended, the chanting from the arena growing more distant with each level he passed. The shaft eventually opened into a vast chamber that took Orion's breath away. The space was dominated by machinery, unlike anything he'd seen before. Crystalline structures interwoven with what appeared to be living tissue, all pulsing with a faint luminescence similar to the pendant's glow. The chamber extended beneath the entire arena floor, with conduits reaching upward to connect with the structure above. At the center stood a pillar of pure light, contained within a series of concentric rings that rotated slowly around it. This was the power source, and it was unmistakably Milaran in design. The same bioluminescent properties that gave Lyria her healing abilities had been harnessed here on a massive scale. They built this place, Orion realized aloud. The Millarans were here long before humans. The pendant's warmth spread through his chest, a confirmation of his deduction. Approaching the central pillar cautiously, Orion examined the control interfaces integrated into the surrounding rings. They responded to his proximity, symbols illuminating as he drew near. Again, acting on instinct, or perhaps guided by the pendant, he placed his hand on what appeared to be the primary control surface. Information flooded his mind, transferred directly through the interface. The facility was designed to channel and amplify Milaran bioenergy, creating a healing matrix that could extend for kilometers in all directions. It had been abandoned during the galactic purges when the Millarans fled. Its purpose forgotten as humans settled the planet and built upon its ruins. The Starflame cult had discovered portions of the technology and misinterpreted its purpose, believing it to be a means of transcendence rather than healing. Their ceremonial cauldron had been integrated with the ancient systems, creating a perversion of the original design. Instead of amplifying and distributing healing energy, it would extract and consume it. And now, they had a living Milaran to connect to the system, which would exponentially increase its power, while killing her in the process. Orion's hand moved across the interface, searching for a way to disrupt the ceremony without destroying the entire facility. The pendant guided him, its pulses directing his movements until he located what seemed to be an emergency override. Activating it would send a surge of energy through the system, temporarily overloading the connections to the arena above. It wouldn't harm the ancient machinery, but it would definitely interrupt whatever ritual Kane had planned. Above, The chanting reached a crescendo. Time had run out. Orion activated the override. The pillar of light flared brilliantly, and the entire chamber hummed with increasing power. Energy coursed through the conduits leading upward, and a deep, rumbling vibration shook the structure. Using the interface, Orion called up a visual of the arena above. The scene was exactly what he'd hoped for: chaos. The collection apparatus above the cauldron sparked and sputtered as excess energy flooded through it. Cultists scattered in panic as the carefully controlled ritual dissolved into confusion. Kane could be seen shouting orders, trying to regain control of the situation. And in the center of it all, Lyria stood on the platform beside the cauldron, her ceremonial bonds disrupted by the energy surge. She looked around wildly, seeking an escape route. Now was the time to move. Orion located an emergency access shaft that would bring him directly to the arena floor, bypassing the main levels. As he climbed, he felt the pendant's warmth spread throughout his body, almost as if the gem were lending him strength for what was to come. He emerged from a hidden panel near the edge of the arena floor, directly opposite from the central platform where Lyria stood. Between them lay dozens of panicked cultists, guards attempting to maintain order, and High Priest Kane, who was now frantically consulting with Dr. Varric over some kind of control panel. Drawing his sidearm, Orion fired 3 precise shots into the air. The energy bolts streaked upward, exploding against the arena's ceiling in brilliant flashes that commanded immediate attention. In the sudden silence that followed, all eyes turned toward him. "That's enough ritual for one day," Orion called out, his voice carrying across the arena. "The ceremony is over." Kane's face contorted with rage. "Seize him! He defiles our sacred work." Guards moved to intercept Orion, their energy staffs leveled. Shifting his aim, Orion fired at the base of the cauldron, causing its contents to spill across the platform in a hissing flood of superheated water. More chaos erupted as cultists scrambled to avoid the scalding liquid. Lyria, seeing her opportunity, leapt from the platform and began running toward Orion. Her movements were graceful, despite her recent captivity, her seafoam skin now glowing visibly with internal light that pulsed in rhythm with the pendant at Orion's chest. "Stop her!" Kane bellowed. "The vessel must not escape!" 4 guards intercepted her path, forming a barrier between her and Orion. Without hesitation, Orion charged forward, firing strategically to scatter, rather than harm the confused cultists between them. He needed to reach Lyria before the guards could recapture her. Dr. Varric appeared at Kane's side, aiming some kind of device at Lyria. "The containment field! High Priest, quickly!" Kane activated a control on his ceremonial robes. A shimmering energy field sprang into existence around Lyria, halting her mid-stride. She cried out, her bioluminescence flaring in response to the containment. "You're too late, delivery man," Kane called to Orion, triumph in his voice despite the disrupted ceremony. "The vessel is secured, and your interference changes nothing. The ascension will proceed." Orion continued forward, cutting through the crowd with ruthless efficiency. The pendant at his chest burned with unprecedented intensity, its light now visible even through his tactical gear, illuminating his path as cultists scrambled to avoid him. "That's not a vessel," Orion shouted back, closing the distance. "She's a living being with rights to her own life and abilities." "Her life serves a greater purpose now," Kane replied, gesturing to the device in Varric's hands. "The containment module you delivered will ensure her essence is properly harvested, even without the ceremonial preparation." The sealed container from the Cygnus Collective. Orion realized with cold clarity that he had delivered the very technology they needed to capture Lyria's bioenergy. His routine job had directly enabled their plans. The pendant pulsed with what felt remarkably like anger. "Yeah, I get it," Orion muttered to the gem. "Not my finest moment." He was within 20 meters of Lyria now, close enough to see the fear and determination in her opalescent eyes as she struggled against the containment field. The guards formed a protective ring around Kane and Varric, their weapons trained on Orion. "Last chance," Orion called out, halting his advance temporarily. "Release her, and I'll let you all walk away." Kane laughed, the sound echoing unnervingly through the arena. "You are but one man against our divine purpose. What power do you imagine you possess to stop us?" In answer, Orion raised his hand to the pendant at his chest, wrapping his fingers around the glowing gem. Following an instinct he couldn't explain, he tore it from its chain and held it aloft. "This power," he replied. The pendant's light exploded outward, blinding in its intensity. Streams of blue-white energy arced from the gem to Lyria, connecting with her glowing skin. The containment field surrounding her flickered and shattered as the pendant's energy overwhelmed it. Lyria gasped as the connection formed, her own bioluminescence intensifying in response. The light within her skin shifted from a gentle glow to a brilliant radiance that emanated outward in pulsing waves. "The Heartstone," she breathed, understanding dawning in her eyes. "It's awakening the ancient network." Beneath their feet, the arena floor trembled as long, dormant systems surged to life. The crystalline machinery in the chamber below responded to the combined energy of the pendant and Lyria's awakened abilities, sending pulses of healing light throughout the structure. Kane stumbled backward, shielding his eyes from the increasing brilliance. "What is this? What have you done?" "I think," Orion replied, advancing once more, "I've helped reconnect a Malaran to her birthright." The guards, momentarily blinded by the light display, failed to track Orion's movement as he closed the final distance to Lyria. Reaching her side, he extended his hand, offering the pendant. "I think this belongs to your people," he said quietly. Lyria took the gem, cradling it in her palms. The moment it touched her skin, the pendant's light synchronized perfectly with her own bioluminescence. "It was calling to me," she said, wonder in her voice. "All this time, it was trying to lead you to me." "Enough of this sacrilege!" Kane roared. Having recovered his composure, he drew a ceremonial dagger from within his robes, the same blade he had intended to use to mark Lyria for the ritual. "If we cannot ascend through the vessel's essence, then we shall claim it by force." He lunged forward, blade aimed at Lyria's heart. Without hesitation, Orion stepped between them, catching Kane's wrist in a grip of iron. The High Priest's momentum carried them both to the ground, the dagger slicing a shallow cut across Orion's shoulder as they fell. They grappled on the arena floor, Kane fighting with the desperate strength of fanaticism. Despite his gaunt appearance, the High Priest possessed surprising strength, fueled by rage and thwarted ambition. "She was our salvation," Kane hissed, trying to force the dagger toward Orion's throat. "Our transcendence." "She's not yours to use," Orion replied through gritted teeth, struggling to maintain his grip on Kane's wrist. The cut on his shoulder burned, blood soaking through his tactical shirt. Kane sensed the weakness and pressed his advantage, the blade inching closer to Orion's neck. Suddenly, a gentle hand touched Orion's wounded shoulder. Lyria knelt beside them, her fingers glowing with concentrated biolight. Warmth spread from her touch, and Orion felt the pain in his shoulder vanish as the wound closed beneath her healing energy. "This is what my people's gift is for," Lyria said softly, her gaze fixed on Kane. "Healing, not harm. Life, not transcendence through death." The renewed strength flowing through Orion enabled him to finally overpower Kane, twisting the High Priest's arm until the dagger clattered to the floor. With a swift strike, Orion rendered the religious leader unconscious. Rising to his feet, Orion surveyed the arena. Most of the cultists had fled during the chaos, leaving only the most devoted guards who now hesitated, uncertain whether to attack or retreat without their leader's guidance. Dr. Varric had disappeared, likely fleeing with the containment module when the tide turned against them. Lyria stood beside Orion, the pendant still cradled in her hands, its light now stabilized into a steady glow that matched her own internal luminescence. The connection between them had awakened something in her, a confidence and power that transformed her from captive to commanding presence. "We need to leave," Orion said quietly. "More guards will come once they regroup." Lyria nodded, but her attention was focused on the arena floor beneath them. "There's something I must do first," she replied. "Something the Heartstone is showing me." Placing the pendant on the ground, Lyria knelt beside it and pressed her palms to the stone floor. Her bioluminescence intensified, spreading from her hands into the arena itself. Cracks appeared in the ancient surface, but rather than destruction, they revealed lines of light that formed intricate patterns, activation sequences for the machinery below. "My ancestors built this place as a healing center," Lyria explained as she worked. "Its purpose was corrupted and forgotten, but not destroyed. I can reawaken it, at least partially." The light spread throughout the arena, following the hidden pathways of the original Malaran design. Where it touched injured cultists who had been caught in the earlier chaos, their wounds began to close. Even the unconscious form of Cain showed the effects, his breathing steadying as the light passed over him. "You're healing them?" Orion asked, surprised. "After what they tried to do to you?" Lyria looked up at him, her opalescent eyes serene. "This is what we are, what we have always been, healers. Not weapons or vessels of power to be consumed." The process continued for several minutes, the healing light extending throughout the arena and into the city beyond. Orion stood guard, weapon ready, but the remaining guards made no move to interfere. They watched in awe as the light transformed their surroundings, many falling to their knees in reverence at what they clearly perceived as a miracle. Finally, Lyria rose, retrieving the pendant from where it had guided her work. "It's done. Not permanent. The systems are too damaged for that, but enough to show what was lost. What could be again?" "Very poetic," Orion replied, keeping a wary eye on the kneeling guards. "But we still need to get off this rock before someone decides to try boiling you again." Lyria actually laughed, a musical sound that seemed to brighten the air around them. "Yes, I suppose we do. Your ship." "This way." Orion nodded toward one of the arena exits. "If we move quickly, we can be off-planet before anyone organizes a pursuit." As they moved toward the exit, a low groan from behind them signaled Cain regaining consciousness. The high priest struggled to his knees, his face a mask of confused rage as he watched his sacred vessel escaping. "Stop them!" he called weakly to his guards. "The vessel! Our ascension!" But the guards remained kneeling, transformed by what they had witnessed. The healing light had shown them a truth that Cain's promises of transcendence never could. Genuine power that gave life rather than consuming it. One guard actually bowed his head to Lyria as she passed. "Forgive us," he murmured. "We did not understand." Lyria paused briefly, placing a gentle hand on the guard's shoulder. "Seek understanding, not ascension," she told him. "That is the true path to the stars." Then, she and Orion were running, leaving the arena behind as they navigated the ruined city toward the landing port where the Neo-Valkyrie waited. Night had fully fallen, the 3 moons of Carthos IV illuminating their path with pale, ghostly light. They encountered no resistance at the port. The chaos at the arena had apparently spread throughout the small settlement, leaving security minimal. Orion led Lyria up the boarding ramp of his ship, a sleek vessel that managed to combine the practical necessities of a bounty hunter with unexpected touches of comfort in its interior. "Nice ship," Lyria commented as Orion secured the hatch behind them. "It gets the job done," he replied, moving swiftly to the cockpit and beginning the launch sequence. "Strap in. This might get bumpy if they've organized enough to scramble pursuit craft." Lyria secured herself in the co-pilot's seat, the pendant still clutched in her hand. Its light had dimmed to a gentle pulse that matched the rhythm of her own bioluminescence. The Neo-Valkyrie lifted smoothly from the landing pad, its engines powering up to full capacity as Orion guided it toward the upper atmosphere. The scanners remained clear, no pursuit detected. "I think your light show did more than heal people," Orion commented as they broke atmosphere. "It seems to have given them something to think about besides chasing us." "The truth often has that effect," Lyria replied. She gazed out the viewport as the curve of Carthos 4 became visible below them, its surface a mix of rusty orange deserts and small, scattered seas. "Where will you take me now?" It was a good question. Orion hadn't thought beyond the immediate escape. His usual protocol after a job, especially one that had gone sideways, was to head for neutral space and lie low until things cooled down. But with Lyria aboard, the situation was more complicated. "You mentioned allies searching for you," he recalled. "Any way to contact them?" Lyria nodded. "With a long-range communicator, yes. The Heartstone can amplify the signal to reach them, wherever they are." Orion gestured to the ship's communication array. "Be my guest. Just don't broadcast our exact location until we know who's receiving." As Lyria moved to the communication station, interfacing the pendant with the ship's systems in a way Orion didn't quite understand, he set a course for the outer edge of the system. Distance from Carthos 4 seemed prudent while they sorted out next steps. The pendant's light flared briefly as it connected with the ship's comm array, sending a signal that pulsed outward in patterns too complex for the Neo-Valkyrie's systems to fully analyze. "Message sent," Lyria said after a moment. "If any of my people are within range, they'll receive it." "And if they're not?" Orion asked, setting the ship on autopilot, now that they were clear of the planet's gravity well. Lyria's expression turned thoughtful. "Then perhaps we find others like me. The Heartstone showed me visions while I was captive. Other Millerans, scattered across dozens of worlds, hiding, surviving, some captive, as I was." "You want to find them," Orion realized. "Create some kind of rescue mission?" "My people are nearly extinct. Orion Vale," Lyria said softly. "Each life preserved matters more than you can imagine." The pendant pulsed in her hand, as if emphasizing her words. Orion leaned back in the pilot's seat, considering. His contract with the Cygnus Collective was definitely burned, delivering their package and then immediately liberating the vessel it was designed to contain wouldn't endear him to future employment. But there were other clients, other jobs, and something about the pendant's connection to Lyria, the ancient Milaran technology beneath the arena, and the scattered survivors of a nearly extinct race intrigued him more than he wanted to admit. "I charge double rates for rescue missions," he said finally. "Triple if they involve infiltrating high-security facilities. And I don't do charity work." Lyria smiled, the bioluminescence beneath her skin brightening with her mood. "The Milaran people have resources beyond energy soup, bounty hunter. Help me find my scattered kindred, and you'll be well compensated." "Deal," Orion agreed, extending his hand. Instead of shaking it, Lyria placed the pendant in his palm, closing his fingers around it. "The Heartstone chose you," she said. "It will guide us to others of my kind, and perhaps help you discover why it found you worthy in the first place." The gem warmed in his grip, its light pulsing in what felt remarkably like anticipation. "Great," Orion muttered. "An alien rescue mission directed by a glowing rock. This is definitely not in my standard contract terms." But as he set course for the nearest jump point, leaving the Carthos system behind, Orion found himself looking forward to whatever lay ahead. The pendant's warmth spread through him, and for once, he didn't tell it to shut up. In the vastness of space, the Neo-Valkyrie accelerated toward distant stars, carrying its unlikely pair of travelers, a bounty hunter with a mysterious connection to an ancient artifact, and the last known Milaran healer, bound together by forces neither fully understood, but both now accepted. Behind them, on Carthos 4, the healing light continued to pulse faintly beneath the ancient arena, a beacon of what once was and what might be again. And in the heart of the ruined city, cultists and citizens alike whispered of the green-skinned goddess who had brought light to their world, if only briefly, not through sacrifice, but through mercy. The stars burned eternal, but their light now seemed to hold a different meaning, not transcendence through consumption, but illumination through understanding. A lesson written in bioluminescent script across the face of a forgotten world, and carried forward by an unlikely messenger with a glowing stone and a newfound purpose. The hunt for the scattered children of Melara had begun,